Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to be working on a grumpy old Penn reel that, well, it's lost its badge, so it's kind of hard to say. This is probably the 4300, but it could be the 4400. Here's the grumpy. What does that say? It says that the reel hasn't been serviced in a very, very long time. We're going to see if we can quiet this one down, do the right service on it, and give this reel a second chance. Well, if you like to learn about fishing reels, if you like to see how they're serviced and repaired, if you like to understand how they're made, who made them, when they made them, and well, just generally enhance your knowledge of fishing reels in general, then I want to suggest that you subscribe to this channel. The channel is called Second Chance Tackle for a reason. It's out there to give reels a second chance, and it's also out there to teach you how to do it yourself. So I would encourage you to subscribe if you like the videos and if you like to learn about them. Maybe you're even in a service business and you want to just expand the types of reels you work on. I work on all kinds of reels, so it may be a good primer for you to see how it's done so you can expand your business. There's a lot of folks that use this as a stepping off point for their own service and repair businesses, and I encourage that. I encourage you to help others give their reels a second chance if that's something that you would like to do. All right, we're starting by removing the exterior pieces. This is the 3 screws that hold the side plate in. And before we go much further, I want to suggest to you that you take pictures of the reel as you're removing the pieces and parts. That's important. If you get lost along the way, the pictures will act as a milestone for you. You can come back and take a look and see where those pieces and parts were, what the orientation was, and, well, just in general how they were before you started taking them apart. All right, we got to move this down here. I'm just hopeful that we don't have a broken main gear in this causing the issue, but we're going to find out soon enough. To get that main gear out, you need to remove the axle shaft. To remove the axle shaft, there's 2 screws. And when you're taking pieces and parts off, I want to encourage you to have a part strategy before you start disassembling a reel. That's important because, well, if you pile the parts up and let's say you're keeping them on your workbench, you can get into trouble in a hurry if you knock something off. Now, I use a parts tray. I use a fast food container at the moment that's got 8 corners to it. And I just kind of put the pieces and parts in different areas of the tray for the assemblies that I'm working on. That way I know where they are. All right, we're going to pull this little clip off here that is holding the axle shaft in. This one's got a little bit of a bend to it. That shouldn't be. It probably was that somebody who was installing this had that axle shaft kind of tilted a little bit like this and tried to just kind of cover up like that. This needs to be flat when you go to reinstall. All right, axle shaft is out. Now we can pull the main gear out and we'll see right away whether we have any issues with the teeth on the main gear. And you've seen that I removed this just to make sure that we didn't have the screw attached in there. And then with a lot of effort pull this out. And you can see how dry that grease is. I have a little bit of a concern here. There's a scar on this tooth, and these 3 are scarred, but I think we can get away with making this work. But it is a little concerning to see. This bearing may be pressed on. I noticed it was hard to get the handle off. So I'm spinning it in place to test it. Okay, next up then we want to remove the rotor. I don't know. This should come off in just a traditional counterclockwise manner. And I did notice on the quick test there with all that noise it was making that this rotor does have a lot of dirt in it as well. So I'm going to start by spraying the joints of the bail with penetrating oil. I'm only going to put a little bit on the base of that. Now this bail has also been bent. You can see it's not a nice round arc, but it is functioning. We'll see after we get done with the service if we can square that up a little bit. It's just that it's got a lot of dirt and debris on it, so it's been some time since the reel is serviced. Don't let your reels go this long without doing the service on them. Okay, I'm going to put this back in here so I don't lose it. The anti-reverse is working. That's always a good thing. And I think we can probably remove that. The anti-reverse here has got the finger dog on it. So just remove your E-clip. This is the clip we just removed from the top post. Put that in a place for safekeeping. Then we should be able to remove the click ratchet and that anti-reverse dog all in one. And boy, is everything really dry on this reel. I'm going to try and use a little screwdriver here just to gain some leverage. There we go. Pull that up and out. Pull both pieces up at the same time, otherwise you risk separating that finger joint on the anti-reverse dog. And then we can set that aside. Alright, there's a lot of dirt and debris in here. It's all the old greases that have dried up. You can see the dust and everything that's in here. And next step then would be to remove the two screws that are holding that pinion gear on. And then we should be able to remove the main shaft and the bearing. And we'll do the complete cleanup on this. And hopefully get it back up. Alright, last thing on this side that we need to do is pull the crosswind block out. I don't know if this one's held in. It's not. Some of these are held in with a screw. I was just checking for that. And while I'm pulling that last piece out, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, maybe you're working on one and you can't figure out why it's doing what it's doing, like this one, why it's so noisy, and your experiences don't tell you why it's happening, then I would encourage you to ask those questions. Leave them in the comment section of this video. It doesn't have to be on this reel. It can be on any reel, and I will try to answer them for you. I had a fella come in the other day and ask me why he's getting a crazy vibration in his Penn Jigmaster, and well, the answer was that he had a 1 gear, and it was just translating right through. We replaced the main gear, and reel runs great. So sometimes you'll feel something and you just don't know what it is. Ask that question. I try to answer those questions in the morning, and well, if you can hang around for that long, then maybe we can solve your issue for you. All right, cleaned up that gear. I want to inspect this one too, because you heard there's a lot of stuff going on in this reel. I'm going to use a hard bristle brush to pull through on the cavities of the gear, and then inspect. All right, that's all good. Next up, we're going to pull this collar off. It's got the old greases and that on there. So this is the classic example of the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? It's hasn't been greased in a very long time. That causes the issues. Hopefully that damage that we saw in the one piece there is just superficial. We're not quite sure. There is a collar on top of this bearing, full of grease, so it's hard to see. Again, the pictures help, and here we go. We have a piece of broken line on there as well. So I'm sure that's contributing to the issues. That broken line certainly is not going to allow the gears to turn efficiently. And then let's test this. Yeah, you know, the bearings, interestingly enough, the bearings are decent. So I'm just going to cover the outside of this to clean it up with some penetrating oil. I don't use the penetrating oil as a lubricant, so after I clean this off, I'm going to put a drop or two of fishing reel oil in there. I'm going to let that seep in. Got to get that piece. We'll do the same thing on the inside. I can't reach that bearing. I did test it before. So I'm just going to clean it with a cotton swab as I clean the rest of the case out here. Just trying to find a little flat blade. We have some stuck grease below here. Might as well get that out. You want to get as much of the old greases and oils out as you can so that they don't break free and cause an issue later. All right. Oil that bearing, oil this bearing. Again, we have the same issue here. And I guess at the risk of breaking the main gear, we probably could try to lever this off on both sides. I can see that it is peened off here. So sometimes you got to let that sleeping dog lie. As long as the bearing is operating, and I've got a good spin on that, and we're just going to let that sit on the post. This is the reason why you do not over torque your handles. It will push this out of round. It will trap that gear there. All right, a little bit of oil on that. Probably should have done that in a little bit because I want to clean the back end of this. I do want to take a quick look at that. There's 2 or 3 teeth there. There's absolutely no grease on this reel. This is just varnished, dried grease from another time, if you will. It's absolutely no good. Now I'm going to pull through and I'm going to look at those teeth. Hopefully it's just superficial damage. They're square. One or two of them is a little bit blunted, but they're not knocked out around. This is one of the ones I'm looking at here, these two, and then there's one on the other side. I think we're going to be able to work on it. This is the one on the other side. So when we put some grease in there, that will fill a little bit of that up. It might be a little bit noisy, and well, that's the price you pay for lack of maintenance. So when should you work on a reel? My recommended maintenance schedule is once a year. Doesn't matter how many times you use it. If it's a reel that you're not quite sure about, maybe you're changing over to another reel. Maybe you're going to just go on hiatus for a while, not do any fishing. Before you put it into storage, make sure you work on it. Make sure you clean it up, get that old stuff out of there. Otherwise, well, it may suffer this fate. It may be more than just the issues that we're having here. I'm using a metal steel brush now to pull through. I can't tell very easily whether this is just a bit of discoloration or whether there's stuff trapped in there. So I want to make sure that we get that clean. And we do, and this, again, it looks pretty good. I don't think we had a lot of time with that gear banging the other one. Okay, I think we're good. All right, let's go about putting this thing back together again then, and we'll see if we fix the issue here. I'm going to start by using fishing reel grease. I'm using Penn precision reel grease. That's the blue grease. And of course, this hasn't seen grease in a very long time, so let's kind of sort of make up for that. We can take the top bearing and the collar. We can bring this back on to the inner post here. Make sure you seat it, that everything sits nice and firm. Again, if you were taking pictures, you know which direction this half-moon collar went. And right now I'm just looking for my screw starter, because I have 2 screws here that are kind of hard for me to start on a reel like this. So we're going to use the screw starter for that. And yes, it went facing away from where that anti-reverse dog and assembly went. Step 1, I do not tighten them down all the way when I use this screw starter. It is a split blade. And, well, if you start tightening it down too much, that blade tends to separate and maybe sometimes gets knocked out of alignment. So tighten it, or snug it up if you will, then finish the tightening with a traditional screwdriver. Okay, this one's working fine, so we're not going to disturb it other than to put it back down on the reel. Bring them both in at the same time. As you spin in this direction, it should back off, and then it should pull in to stop the reel when you come back in the other direction. I'll take our E-clip and put that on. Sometimes finger pressure will get it done. Sometimes you need a little assist. I'm going to use my micro pliers for a little assist here. My hand's in the way, I apologize, but that's what we just put on. Then we can go underneath here, put this part on. So we've cleaned our oscillation gear. The oscillation gear has an offset stud. That's what's going to move high and low. That's going to move your axle shaft upside down. It's driven by the small gear on the back of your main gear. And so you want to make sure that you have a nice coating of grease on both sides, this one and the main gear. This gets grease everywhere. The back end is going to be for the case. Inside the piece is going to be where the stud rides. And on the face here where the crosswind block rides. You want to make sure that piece gets well greased in every direction. Insert that and make sure that it sits over the stud. And then bring your stud to the base. Next up then is that oscillation block. Looks like that's one of the pieces we didn't clean, so take a moment to clean that. And I use a variety of cleaners. I try to stay as least abrasive as I can before getting out things like files and steel balls and things like that. But every now and then you're going to need that. Okay, common failure point on these is this part right here breaks off. Just be aware of that. If you have one and it's not oscillating, it may be that that part is broken off. That's the only place that gets grease here, back face. And bring that in. Sometimes it's going to be hard to get it in from the base. So move the stud up like this, because you have an indent on there. Makes it a little bit easier to get the piece in. And then make sure you return it to the bottom for when you're going to do that axle. All right, we've checked this out. We know that we have two teeth that look like they got scraped up a little bit. We're hoping that it didn't get scraped up all that much. So it's time now to put fresh grease on it. And, you know, Penn's product is a nice product here. It's a sturdy one. It's over-engineered. It should get us through that little issue there. Bring your main gear back in. And this main gear has to go in before your axle shaft goes in. Okay, well, I had to go the extra step here and remove the override in order to put the gear in because the back was now bumping against it for whatever reason. So we put that back in. Now we can reset this override. There was a lot of dirt and debris on this override. It wasn't opening and closing. I thought it was frozen in place, but it was just grease junk. So you didn't see me take it out, but you'll see me put it back in clean. And, well, it'll do what it needs to do. There's a spring on the override. It sits underneath here with an angular insert. And the first thing you want to do when you go to put that override back in, bring it in and kind of aim for two things. You want to aim for the bottom hole, and you want to aim this for the little V-shaped section of the case. And usually what's going to happen with this is it's going to be way out of where it should be in terms of adjustment. So this is going to be a case where you're going to turn this and push down to get that through the base of the piece and seat it as it should. So we just pushed down, and it needs a little bit more push to get it in. There we go. Okay. Just need to finish this then with the toggle arm and the screw that holds it on. Then we can turn our attention to putting the rotor on, the axle shaft in, and seeing if it makes a difference. Now we have a toggle again. We didn't have that toggle before. Okay, rotor goes on next. When we're done, we'll go see if we can't straighten out that bail a little bit. But for now, what we're trying to do is get the wheel quiet again and operational so that Bob can take this fishing. Okay, make sure your crosswind block is in the lowest position. Make sure your axle shaft is clean. Just the lightest coating of grease because, well, when you put it through that pinion gear, it's going to scrape it off. It's a close tolerance over here. Bring that in and down. And then make sure, as we mentioned before, that your flat side is there. I don't know why this kind of got bent out. I'm just going to use a bench vise quickly. Press that back into shape. A little bit better. I think if we put it in from the opposite side, we'll bend it the rest of the way. Back to my screw starter and my parts tray for the two pieces that belong there. Get the one started. Again, I don't use this to tighten it down. I simply use this to start the screws. Grab the second one. And those of you that are noticing, I do wear a glove. It keeps the oils and greases off my hand. And as you can imagine, I work on a lot of reels, and I'm never quite sure what folks have used for oils and greases. And to the extent that I can at least keep one hand kind of protected, I try to do that. I've had trouble with gloves on my dominant hand that I use for tightening screws and the like. All right, I'm going to grab a cotton a kitchen scrubby, a little bit of rod and reel cleaner. This is UV damage. It's not going to do much to restore the finish on this, but it will clean up the dirt on here. It's a Penn rod and reel cleaner. I find it's very useful. All right, two more screws here. Put the handle on. See how we did. So the reel came in with a lot of noise, and that was evident. Two teeth, or three teeth, two separate sections that looked a little scarred. That's a concern, but didn't look like they were bent to the point where they will interfere with the performance of the reel. And well, if it does, then that means if you want to improve on that performance, you're going to have to get a main gear. These gears are pretty much aluminum, so there's not a lot you can do with these. They do kind of scar easily. You saw the one there. All right, same thing with the handle here. It's been a long time. Just going to squirt this down with some penetrating oil. Spin it. And we can get this handle back on. See how we did. This can go on either side. Well, let's give it a try then. This is a much more natural looking bail. It has a nice kind of even arc to it. Flips nice and easy the way it should. And well, that's it. Well, I want to thank everybody for watching. I hope this is lessons learned in terms of keeping your reel maintained, not letting it dry out to the point where you could cause damage to it. And well, a lesson in how to give this reel a second chance. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.